So let's talk through one brutal damage combo that kills near anything in the game. Imperial Knights, Lichguard blocks, and Mortarion all fall in a single shooting phase before the might of this unit. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're talking about another ludicrous damage combo in 40k, and look at some of the ludicrous numbers that the Tau Crisis Battlesuit block spits out, often able to take down the very toughest stuff that the opponent has to offer in a single turn of brutal firepower. Tau Crisis suits were really quite good before the points changes to Tau. Now they're even better given that they got some fairly solid points cuts on top of already being one of the few very good units. Basically these guys can move really quite far on the board or deep strike down to get in range, absolutely obliterate one target. They're not without the added fun of Hazardous Rolls trying to kill a bunch of the Crisis suits in the process, and then maybe pull the Tau jump shoot jump maneuver to get back to safety depending on how they were delivered. The damage output that these guys can get is absolutely magnificent, and as we'll see in a second, they can spit out some very silly numbers. The base of the combo is of course built around the Tau Crisis Battlesuit unit, 360 points for 6 of these, and that gets you a fairly mobile squad with a 10-inch move, toughness 5 and 4 wounds, and a choice of 3 weapon systems and a support system. The unit's definitely not really all that tanky for the cost, though most people choose to improve it with 2 shield drones for 2 extra wounds, and then a shield generator on top of that, so actually the defensive profile tends to be 6 wounds and a 4+ invulnerable save per crisis suit. In 10th edition, the battlesuit weapons do seem to be fairly badly balanced this time round. Even just from a first glance, it seems that the cyclic ion blasters just generally seem to be the most dangerous and scary, far better than most of the rest against the field, and well worth it even with the hazardous rolls built in. Each battlesuit can take an unrestricted 3 of these, so you get 9 shots at strength 8, AP 2 and damage 2 per 60-point model, which is already fairly good, though you can drop it down to 9 shots at strength 7, AP 1 and damage 1 if you don't want to risk hazardous, which some of the time is actually genuinely going to be the best option, particularly if you think the unit's just going to absolutely overkill whatever it fires at. Just from the base unit, that's 54 shots at strength 8, AP 2 and damage 2, which is fairly terrifying on its own, though of course you can layer several buffs on that. First up, perhaps the most common include for a commander to lead them is the Coldstar Commander. He's just 110 points now, also going down in the points changes. His main innate buff is a movement buff, though he's often there to carry the Exemplar of Kauyon Warlord trait. He makes the Tau Battlesuit unit move 12 inches, so a couple of extra inch movement on that, and also makes the entire unit's weapons assault weapons as well, which synergizes very well with the Tau Crisis suit built-in special rule, which means that if they advance, they auto-advance 6. It means that each turn the Crisis unit will be moving around 18 inches and still able to fire at full effect. That means that all of those cyclic ion blasters, despite their 18-inch range, actually have a 36-inch threat range when they're on the board, and it's going to be pretty terrifying to try and hide out of line of sight from them. The commander himself also chips in with the damage output in quite a big way. He hits on 3s innately rather than 4s, and he can either take 4 cyclic ion blasters with him just for maximum damage, or maybe trade one of them out either for a battlesuit support system, shield generator, or high output burst cannon. I feel like you could make arguments for most of those, though I think it still is generally going to make sense to take a fair few cyclic ion blasters. Then one of the main reasons that a generic character is quite nice to have in the unit is that they can take the Exemplar of Kauyon. This is a Tau enhancement that only costs 15 points and is near in auto-include territory, I think. This one means that when the bearer is leading a unit, that unit's Kauyon detachment rule takes effect from the second battle round rather than the third. That's the one that gives you the sustained hits. Sustained hits 1 if you're not guided, and sustained hits 2 if you are guided by another unit. In reality, with such a big, massive and scary unit, you're generally going to be able to find something to guide them. They're going to be absolutely top priority. Sustained hits 2 is an absolutely enormous boost. Every hit roll of a 6 gets 2 more, and compared with even a guided unit, that's basically a 50% damage boost right there. Pretty scary when you're using it on so many models, and particularly that you can get it turn 2, not having to wait around for turn 3, really massive in actually making that damage output count early. Then for actually guiding the unit, it maybe is a little bit more helpful if you just want to focus fire all your firepower on one really big enormous threat that your opponent has. Guiding the unit gives it +1 ballistic skill, so hitting on a 3+ rather than a 4. You get to ignore cover if the unit that's doing the guiding has a marker drone or a marker-like keyword, and that's also very relevant in 10th edition, particularly with mid-AP type things. It could be a little bit sad against 2+ saves in cover otherwise. Besides other guiding units giving you further buffs, you don't actually really lose all that much by splitting fire provided you're in Kauyon. Before any other buffs, if you're in Kauyon, then 9 cyclic ion blaster shots when guided will average you 9 hits due to the exploding 6s. If you're not guided, then you just average the 6 hits, so again that's a 50% damage buff going from 6 to 9. But it's also kind of interesting that the Kauyon rule just merely requires the unit to be guided, even if they fire at different targets. So even if a few of the crisis suits did choose to split fire and go against something else, you're still averaging 6 hits overall. They do take the -1 ballistic skill penalty, but going from sustained hits 1 to sustained hits 2 compensates for that. Basically, it does always make sense to guide the unit, even if you are splitting fire in a very big way. Then in the Tau army, there's a few really good options for guiding the unit, various different ways that make a guided unit more scary with additional buffs. Probably one of the best all-round ones at the moment are the Forge World Tetras, which are just 80 points for a pair of them. They're annoying little piranha-style nuisance skimmers without any major arms, but when they guide a unit with their high-intensity marker lights, you get to reroll all hits against your chosen target, which is pretty enormous. Compared with just a regular guided unit being guided normally, that's basically an extra 33% damage output. Almost every attack will hit, a good chunk of them will get double exploding 6s, and even with the commander himself who's hitting on a 2+ now, it actually makes sense for him to just reroll everything that isn't a 6 and fish for those double exploding. Otherwise, there's other options though. With stealth suits for 60 points, they allow you to reroll wound rolls of 1 against their spotted target, so a 17% damage boost there. Not too bad, as they're a nice cheap unit for screening and forward deployment anyway, so you might want some of them around. Or potentially for a bit of a pricier option, you could have another leader unit on the board using Through Unity Devastation. That's an enhancement for 20 points that allows you to get lethal hits against the target that you're guiding. That's an absolutely massive deal to mid-strength weapons like those cyclic ion blasters trying to take down anything that's toughness 9 or above. That's going to be an effective 50% damage output against that, though it works out as being less impressive than the Tetras overall if you happen to be firing against anything that's toughness 8 or below. You could maybe have that on the field in something like a Cadre Fireblade in a strike team for 140 points. They both went down quite a lot. Could be a unit that's holding a home field objective and chipping in a little bit of pulse rifle fire as they support other units perhaps. Those are the ones that I consider maybe the core things, but you could also have things like Shadow Sun nearby for reroll ones to hit for the unit. She's pretty good to have at the heart of most armies really, with some nice rerolls, good anti-tank fire support, doing annoying lone operative things, and some stratagem refund chance. Her damage buff won't be relevant if the unit gets guided by Tetras though. And there is a stratagem called Point Blank Ambush, which gives you an extra AP within 9 inches. This one's only usable on Battle Round 3+ though. So again, this one's not going to be relevant if they are going for a big strike on turn 2. It could be very relevant if they get the chance to hit something up close slightly later. Putting it all together, here's just one idea for one combo for the unit, guided by Tetras. In this one we've got 6 crisis suits, all with max cyclic ion blasters, shield drones, and shield generators. They're led by a Coldstar Commander for the big movement for an extra 110 points, plus the enhancement, plus I've also factored in the cost of 2 Tetras for 80 points. Overall, that makes up to around 565 points worth of investment, so just over a quarter of the army there, though I suppose the Tetras could also be used to guide other things on other turns. And in terms of raw firepower, if you just gave the Coldstar max cyclic ion blasters, that's 66 strength 8, AP 2 and damage 2 shots, or hitting a ballistic skill 3+ or better, re-rolling all the hits, sustained hits 2 from Kauyon and guided, and ignoring cover from the Tetras marker light keyword. All in all, due to the double exploding 6s, that averages you 83 hits on the target, so far more hits than you have shots, all just at very nice general purpose firepower type profiles. Adding up the overall damage for that, then you'd just obliterate any infantry unit out there pretty much. You'd kill around about 70 dead termagants, though in reality it doesn't make sense to overcharge against them. You'd get 57 if you didn't. That profile is kind of ruinous to standard Space Marines, so you'd average around 46 dead intercessors. Definitely any 10-man Space Marine squad just massively overkilled there, so it probably makes sense to split fire a bit. If you did just focus down one unit though, again you could probably get away without overcharging anything. You still kill around 14 of them with the strength 7 and damage 1 profile. Getting into targets more worthy of them though, you'd average around 14 dead Terminators, should be a 10-man block with a character killed on average there. And then for the targets they're wounding on a 5+, you get 37 wounds to a toughness 9 to 12, save 3+ vehicle. Or going for a very hard target, you get around about 28 wounds to a 2+ save vehicle or 4+ invulnerable save one. Cover doesn't even matter for the 2+ save vehicles that would usually get a bigger benefit from it, as they get to ignore that. Overall, all in all, most standard sized units in the game will just be vaporized off the board. including the majority of things like Questoris or Dominus Knights, maybe a little bit close on those ones depending on feel no pain type rolls. The damage combo is definitely expensive, but if it does have something that's worthy of it trying to shoot down, you can kill the majority of its points cost back in a single round of shooting, before hopefully retreating to safety, as we'll mention in a second. All of this does come with a cost in hazardous rolls though. If you do go for the big overcharge and hit everything with strength 8 and damage 2, you're likely to fail somewhere around the region of 3 or 4 hazardous rolls. You have to roll once per every single cyclic ion blaster in the unit, so that'd be 22 if your Coldstar has 4 of them. It means that in return you're losing around about 9 to 12 wounds of crisis suits, or 1 to 2 models lost, or you could think about it as 90 to 120 points worth of your own army killed by your own units. So if you are going for big overcharge things, you need to make sure there's a target that's worthy of it, and you don't want to be losing equal amounts of your own models compared with what you've killed. For that reason, unless you do have a target that's actually worthy of maximal damage output, say like a big block of Terminators or a Knight or a vital battle tank, you should probably consider not overcharging, or at least with part of the unit maybe. As mentioned, just the Strength 7 and AP1 type shots should give you a good chance of killing most normal Space Marine type units, and you could maybe always overcharge with just say 2 or 3 of the crisis suits to limit casualties a bit, just to make sure that you're not punished by your dice going a bit cold for a turn. You potentially can command reroll hazardous rolls as well. You'd only be able to do it with one of them. That one might make sense if you think it's likely to allow you to save a whole crisis suit and allow that to be on the board next turn. For some things that do look like they would be worth maximal damage output though, I was interested to see how they'd do against some units that are considered some of the toughest in 40k. Overall, it looks like their profile is particularly good at dealing with Necron Lichguard. They're one of the units that, if you can, you absolutely do want to try and take down in a round of shooting, as they get their reactive reanimation to stand a whole bunch of them back up if you fail. And they've got things like -1 to wound, a 4+ invulnerable save, a 5+ feel no pain, and potentially other things going on like the hypermaterial ablator maybe. Just at base, not accounting for anything like a -1 to hit from the hypermaterial ablator, you average around about 13 or 14 of them dead. That's pretty phenomenal into such a tanky Necron unit. It looks like you should be odds on to wipe out the vast majority of non-character models, though I think that it's going to get a lot closer if they've got Cryptothralls in there as well. That's pretty brutal stuff, and it looks like Crisis Suits are perhaps a particularly good counter to that kind of unit. Otherwise, for other big tough things in the game, Mortarium with his toughness 12, 16 wounds, and a 4+ invulnerable save does around about 18 wounds to him. Again, not quite guaranteed dead there, though you're odds on. Pretty scary stuff to be able to pretty much one-shot one of the most durable Demon Primarchs. And then for another tanky unit, for 5 Custodian Wardens with their -1 to wound and triggering their 4+ feel no pain type save for the phase. That still averages you around about 21 wounds on the target, which should wipe out the squad, though it might be a bit close if they had a very tanky attached character. If the Custodians player uses -1 damage for their stratagem on the unit though, then you only kill around about 3 of them. Seems that that toughness combo is enough to keep them safe at least for one phase, at least without additional firepower chipped in. Overall, very scary stuff. Just for a few other thoughts, then the Crisis unit can go jump shoot jumping away as well. There hasn't actually been any major command point spend so far overall at all, despite the big wombo combo, besides maybe re-rolling a hazardous roll if you want to. That one will be 2 command points for a move shoot move. Potentially that means that your unit's moved 18 inches up the board to get in strike range of the target, then gets to move an extra 12 inches to try and keep them safe as best as they can, trying to either hide out of line of sight or backpedal a bit from oncoming enemy charging units. It's pretty terrifying if this squad could rinse and repeat the next turn if they do manage to stay safe with some good positioning. Though even if the enemy can catch up with them, they still have some options. You potentially could overwatch with a very scary unit. Just 1 CP for all those shots is pretty powerful. And as their vehicles, they can fire in combat as well, with big guns never tire on the go, potentially just trying to kill anything that engaged them. Otherwise, for splitting fire, as mentioned, you do get a damage drop off there. If you were being guided by Tetras, you'd lose around about half your damage output if you fired against a different target. You go from hitting on 3s to hitting on 5s, though you still get the sustained hits, and you don't get the reroll hits from Tetras, and in between all that, that's quite a nerf. In general, with the unit, I think they want to dedicate the majority of their firepower to their primary target, not be cutting it fine or anything, and make sure that you do have enough that you should easily kill it even with a slightly low roll, but then after that, anything else may as well fire against something different, and get a little bit of extra helpful chip damage on other units. Otherwise, could be fun to run a variant of this with Commander Farsight potentially. Maybe a smaller unit of Crisis Suits could still be good with that. Potentially you could go rapid ingressing somewhere kind of safe in the opponent's turn where they can't just shoot your unit. Then move up the board to within 9-inch range to get Farsight's +1 to wound on the go. Maybe even following it up with a charge and tank shock if it made sense to perhaps bully a different unit, provided it doesn't compromise the unit staying safe if they're able to, or get them killed in combat in your own turn. You wouldn't be able to get early carry on with that though, so it might be better to have them try and come in on turn 3 potentially. It might be a little bit late in the day. In any case, very scary Tau stuff there. Let me know what you make of it down in the comments below, and let me know if you've had any games either with or against the big damage combo. What sort of things has it managed to kill? If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics. I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming. I do tend to post new ones just about every day. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that linked in the video description if you'd like to check it out. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, an absolutely enormous thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.